Hello there viewers, and welcome to another edition of Formula One Talk. And first off, I have to apologise for the lack of an episode being uploaded yesterday. Some things had to be done around the house, so that's why I couldn't upload it yesterday. So to begin with, this weekend marked Williams Formula One's 600th Grand Prix, and to be brutally honest, they weren't expecting much from the weekend. The car is extremely poor this year. It's only just better than the Caterhams and the Marussias this year. It's the third worst car, and even they were saying it wasn't going to be a really decent Grand Prix. They were hoping for points, but it just wasn't going to happen. As you can expect, a few drivers weren't looking forward to this weekend's action, mainly because of the tyre blowouts we had at Silverstone last time out. But the thing that was concerning most teams and drivers was the fact that the tyres had gone back to a 2012 specification. And this meant that the Red Bulls were favourites to win pole position and the race. Now, fortunately, Lewis Hamilton managed to secure pole position, but then suffered the usual race pace of the Mercedes, which, to be honest, compared to their qualifying pace, is a little bit poor. But anyway, both Red Bulls at the start, both of them took Hamilton into turn one, where Webber almost took Vettel coming into the first corner, but Sebastian had the inside line and went on. Felipe Massa spun out at the end of lap 4, stalled the car and was thusly out of the race. Very embarrassing for Felipe at the time when he needs podiums and victories to secure his race seat at Ferrari. Again, the paddock and the overall consensus is the fact that this will be Massa's last year at Ferrari, if not his last year in Formula One. His luck just doesn't seem to be with him at the moment. We always seem to go through a stage of a season, especially the last few seasons since Alonso arrived on the scene at Ferrari, that should they keep hold of Massa? And usually he performs really well for 5 or 6 Grand Prix. But Ferrari need constructor points at a time when they don't have the quickest car, they don't have the most competitive car, and Fernando is pulling out what he can with the machinery he's got. He needs a number 2 that's going to score a position below him or 2 positions below him to get the maximum constructors points. At present, I do not believe Ferrari can win the Constructors' Championship with the car they have, and that's obvious. You know, there's 4 cars faster than the Ferrari. There's actually probably 6 cars faster than the Ferrari at the moment. But that being said, Massa should be getting 8th place finishes at the moment, and he's not managing those. And he spun out of the race. One of the big talking points of the weekend was when Mark Webber came in for his first stop, I believe. 3 tyres were changed perfectly well, perfectly normally, but the 4th tyre wasn't. And he was released for some very strange reason, and his wheel hit a cameraman who was filming other pit stops in the race. This has led to a banning of cameramen or media people in the pit lane while the race is going ahead. There are also calls for pit stops to be made slower to make sure that wheels are fastened properly. It's a little bit dangerous considering that McLaren last year changed the tyre in 4 tyres in 2.3 seconds, and that is, you know, it should be all fastened safely, securely. But sometimes mistakes are made, and this mistake could have cost the cameraman quite a bit. I'm pretty sure he had a mild concussion because it hit the back of his head. But the cameraman was fine, but he doesn't want, the FIA and Formula One in general don't want to be liable for an accident where it doesn't need to be happening. So that's what the main talking point in the race was. Some good action between Hamilton of Mercedes and Alonso of Ferrari, dicing for positions for about 3 or 4 laps in the middle of the race. We had our first engine blowout of the season. The Marussia of Jules Bianchi. We used to get 4 or 5 of these a race. Now we're lucky to get 4 or 5 a season. The engines these days are built to a specification and means they're more reliable, which means we don't see this as often as we used to. But Bianchi's engine blowout almost caused a safety car. What did cause the safety car was the fact that his car was left at the top of a hill and started to roll backwards with no driver in it. This brought out the safety car for a few laps, and that was on lap 24. And Maldonado, he had right tyre trouble whilst in the pits, further confounding Williams to an awful season. But meanwhile, out in front, Sebastian Vettel was beginning to dominate. However, he was being closed down very quickly by both Lotus drivers, those being Kimi Raikkonen and Romain Grosjean. However, Sebastian managed to keep his head when everyone else was losing theirs, and he managed to stay in control to win the race. Not a sprint. So, on with the race results, and first off Sebastian Vettel, second Raikkonen, third Grosjean, fourth Alonso in a bit of a recovery drive considering that he had changed tactics for this weekend in qualifying. Qualified on the harder compound tyre and not the soft one, basically like everybody else. Fifth place for Hamilton, sixth place for a small resurgence in form of Jenson Button and the McLaren. Seventh was Mark Webber, considering that he had that mishap in the pits, which cost him a lap, nearly a lap on the leaders. Decent recovery drive from him. Eighth for Perez, so double points finish for McLaren. That's basically all they can hope for at the moment. Rosberg ninth, not bad considering a bad judgment in error by the team meant that he had a long race on Sunday. And Hulkenberg and Sauber in 10th, which was a pretty good result considering he had the likes of Ricciardo, De Resta, and all of the others like that behind him. To the Drivers' Championship standings, Vettel top, as you'd imagine, with 157. Now beginning to pull away from Alonso in second on 123, Raikkonen third on 116, Hamilton fourth on 99, Webber fifth on 93, Rosberg sixth on 84, Massa seventh, 57, Grosjean eighth, 41, De Resta ninth, 36, and Button is 10th on 33. On to the Constructors' Championship, Red Bull top with 250, Mercedes second on 183. They've overtaken Ferrari now because of the poor scoring record of Massa. Ferrari on 180, Lotus fourth on 157, a long way ahead of Force India, who are on 59 points. McLaren sixth on 49, Toro Rosso seventh on 24, Sauber eighth on 7, with Williams, Marussia and Caterham yet to score. So what conclusions can we draw from the race this weekend? The first one is Ferrari need a working upgrade and they need it fast. Comments I was seeing from BBC commentator David Coulthard on the internet basically said Ferrari need to win some races, they need to win this championship and soon, within the next 2 seasons, otherwise Alonso is out of there looking for a better team. If I was Fernando, I'd be looking for that Red Bull seat that Mark Webber's giving up at the end of this season. Alonso at the moment cannot win the championship with Ferrari unless they're spending millions in testing and things like that. Ferrari are not really good enough to win the championship with these current testing regulations. And we've got a young driver test coming up, which on one day of that young driver test, race drivers, apart from the Mercedes, for that testing ban that they have, all drivers can compete in that young driver test to make sure that they can use the tyres and use them safely. It's a test that Ferrari need badly. Alonso has said Ferrari must start winning. There may well be a clause in his contract or something like that to say, if I don't win the championship with you with 4 seasons, I've got a free release. You can't stop me going wherever I want to go. Because at the moment, the Lotus is faster than the Ferrari in race trim. The Red Bull is most certainly faster in race trim. The Mercedes is only just slower in race trim than the Ferrari. And what Mercedes have, they're quick in qualifying, but they're slow in the race. As with Ferrari, they're slow in qualifying and quick in the race. If they both had each other's upsides, both teams would be more competitive and more of a threat to Vettel and Red Bull. But the biggest threat to Red Bull at the moment is probably Lotus in terms of race pace. The tyre management of Mercedes is yet again the big question of Mercedes. Obviously they're going to have a better season next year, but you heard Hamilton on the race radio to his race engineer, "This is as fast as I can go, I cannot go any faster." And he was being told to push, and he basically said, "I'm pushing, man, I'm pushing." So that's something that Mercedes have got to work on. It's unfortunate that Vettel isn't doing a tremendous job compared to previous seasons, but what he is doing, he's scoring consistent points, and that's how you win the World Championship. You stay on course when others around you are not scoring decent points or decent results. Like Alonso, that was the first time he hasn't finished on the podium for quite a while, and unfortunately for the viewing public, this World Championship could be over by, say, Spa. I mean, obviously it won't be, but we've got a 3-week break now until the next Grand Prix. We're seeing that a few of the teams are beginning to pick up the slack where they're beginning to improve their car. Look at McLaren's results in this race compared to the last 2. No constructors' points or no points at all in the last 2 races. Double points finish this time around. Another thing we can draw from this race is, as I said earlier, that Felipe Massa does need to start performing, and performing well. Massa will not be a Ferrari driver next year if these results continue. Consensus in the paddock is basically that Gil Bianchi might be getting his seat for next season. I'd actually give a shout out to Paul di Resta. He's got the Italian lineage, so to speak, that Scottish-Italian lineage. I'd put him in the second seat at Ferrari and see what he can do. He was frustrated not to get a top race seat this year, but he's been showing what he can do in the Force India this year. You know, with a bit better luck, the Force India could score a podium. A race of attrition like we used to get in the mid to late 90s. A Force India could score a race victory in races like that. So it's all relative. It's all wondering, you know, who's going to be where next year. But as far as this race goes, it was predictable. The tyres have been made more resilient, made to a different specification, and it basically gives the advantage back to Red Bull. And it makes me wonder, how long is it going to be before they change the rules again to stop Vettel winning championships? Vettel was on course for a 4th World Championship in succession, and when that happened in the early 2000s with Michael Schumacher at Ferrari, you have to remember that they changed the rules to qualifying, they changed the rules to stop a driver winning so many championships in a row. So are they going to change the rules and regulations? I mean, obviously next year we've got the new aerodynamics coming in, we've got new rules, new regs, new designs and things like that, with the new engines and with the turbocharged engines rather than gas guzzlers. But you have to take into consideration that these rule changes were put into effect, or they were proposed in 2009 when the last big rule change came in. So is Vettel going to dominate next year? He's not exactly dominating this year, but what he is doing, as I say, is scoring consistent points, and that, as I say, is how you win a championship. So that's basically it for this edition of Formula One Talk. Again, I apologise for it not being up yesterday, but circumstances beyond my control meant I couldn't record. So I thank you for watching, as you do each and every time. Subscribe, rate and comment to these videos, and as well as that, you'll be getting a half-season review sometime in the next couple of weeks. We've got 3 weeks to go before the next Grand Prix, which is a perfect time for me to give you a half-season review as to how I think some drivers are doing. I'm not going to focus on every single driver, but I will be doing that at the end of the season in my season review show. So thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time for more Formula One Talk. See you then.